Wallace had suffered a life-threatening heart incident because of the stress caused by attempts to serve the Rule 202 petition. The It Ends With Us saga is not for the faint of heart.
We know people who have been hospitalized due to the stress of daring to work with.
After one of the guys Blake Lively sued had a heart attack, her career took a nosedive. As it happens, someone will inevitably wind up in the middle of a questionable lawsuit when you scatter them around like confetti.
I feel sympathy. My personal view is I feel sympathy for Jed Wallace on what I know.
It seems like a full-body hazard alert for your work and your life to be anywhere near Blake these days.
Jed Wallace, he, according to the potty-trained princess, is a key player in the retaliation campaign against.
Jed Wallace's involvement goes to the core of the problem with Blake Lively's legal approach, making him more than simply another name in this scandal. Former public relations executive Wallace has ties to Justin Baldoni's co-founded firm, Wayfair Studios.
He has repeatedly denied any retaliation, any smear campaign, and a perceived astroturfing is all organic, truly, because people can make up their own minds based on everything that the plantation princess has said. And
perhaps most significantly, he had an insider's view of what went wrong at the PR company Jones Works, which was at the epicenter of the scandal.
Lively's initial lawsuit, she did not include Jed Wallace. However, in the amended complaint, he was added alongside the.
Wallace's proximity to the drama wasn't the only thing that made him a threat to Blake and her team. He also knew the timeline, when things began to go wrong, who said what behind the scenes, and how much Blake's public statements didn't match the truth of what was happening at Wayfair.
50-year-old alleges that Jed Wallace, who lives and works in Texas, is the person most responsible for the astroturfing against her, which has hurt not just the burgeoning baker, also Blakey Crocker's family and her business.
Wallace wasn't repeating rumors. He had direct knowledge of emails, meetings, and internal decisions. Blake's team quickly realized how dangerous that was. Instead of facing the facts laid out by Wallace, they tried to paint him as a rogue actor.
Wallace filed a lawsuit in Texas against her first. And now the Queen of Hearsay has filed a motion in Texas to be dismissed from Jed Wallace's law.
They suggested he wasn't trustworthy, that he was acting out of revenge, or that he had some hidden agenda. But that strategy didn't hold up. Wallace's employment records, the dates of his contracts, and the projects he worked on were all documented. His credibility wasn't easy to shake, Jed.
Jed evaded and obstructed Miss Lively's persistent efforts to seek information from him before filing this lawsuit in anticipation of becoming a party in the New York litigation.
Her entire claim of being the victim of a smear campaign would collapse. Wallace's credibility was strong enough that simply attacking him wasn't an option. It would require dismantling actual evidence, and Blake's team wasn't prepared for that. Things got even worse when Jed Wallace filed a formal declaration under penalty of perjury. Wallace himself is suing Blake Lively for defamation in California. That's serious. Under Code of Civil Procedure Section 2015.5, a declaration under penalty of perjury carries the same legal weight as testifying in court. If Wallace lied in his statement, he could face criminal charges, including prison time. Quote,
Jan 3rd, Khaleesi, in her own mind, after trying to serve Wallace at his gated property, her process server received a text message from an associate of his lawyer, Brian.
That's a massive risk for anyone to take, especially someone who is never directly suing or being sued in the main case. Wallace had nothing to gain by lying and everything to lose.
Jed himself is suing Blake.
California, that's serious. Under Code of Civil Procedure Section 2015.5, a declaration under penalty of perjury carries the same legal weight as testifying in court. If Wallace lied in his statement, he could face criminal charges, including prison time.
Quote, Wallace's counsel also indicated that Wallace had suffered a life-threatening heart incident because of the stress caused by attempts to serve the Rule 202 petition.
His declaration was just 2 pages long, but in those 2 pages, he dropped a legal bombshell. He described how JonesWorks, the PR firm working with Blake Lively, manipulated the public relations timeline to favor Blake's version of events.
After engaging in a retaliatory social media campaign against Ms. Lively, plaintiffs now seek to drag her into a foreign court that lacks jurisdiction in an attempt to further punish her for privileged communication.
Even more damaging, Wallace said he faced retaliation and intimidation after he refused to participate in the cover-up. According to him, the moment he made it clear he wouldn't lie to protect Blake or JonesWorks, he became a target. His work opportunities dried up.
Wallace, he's lucky to be alive. The rest of her motion is pretty standard stuff. She made no specific defamatory statements against Jed Wallace, blah, blah.
His name was quietly blacklisted in circles where Blake's influence was strong, and all of it happened after he pushed back against the false narratives being built by Blake's team. 2 pages might not sound like much, but the legal impact of Wallace's declaration was enormous. Last,
Texas federal court, Blake Lively filed 802 pages in her attempt to dismiss Jed Wallace's.
Meet hundreds of pages filled with gossip or vague allegations. What he provided was clean, direct, and legally devastating. His statement introduced 2 serious legal theories into the case: witness tampering and wrongful retaliation.
Somebody for something and you make allegations or claims about them in a court under penalty of perjury, it's very difficult to then use those claims as grounds for a defamation.
Witness tampering means any effort to intimidate, threaten, or coerce someone into changing or withholding their truthful testimony. Wallace's claims about retaliation suggested that Blake's team tried to pressure him to stay silent or change his story.
Off the bat, I think Jed Wallace has an extremely uphill.
If proven, that wouldn't just hurt Blake's credibility. It could trigger a criminal investigation.
Lively filed a complaint of employment discrimination. Now, this was like a precursor law.
Wrongful retaliation is another huge problem. Under California Labor Code, retaliation is clearly defined. It's illegal for an employer or someone acting on their behalf to retaliate against a person for disclosing information the employee reasonably believes violates state or federal laws.
Mentioned Jed Wallace in that first CRD complaint, the one that wasn't really a lawsuit, but then whenever she copy and pasted a whole bunch of stuff into that real lawsuit, she did not copy and paste Jed Wallace or Streep.
S. Wallace's declaration fits into protected whistleblowing activities. He reported what he believed were unlawful practices, including intimidation and PR fraud. The law specifically protects whistleblowers from exactly the kind of retaliation that Blake's lawsuit appears to represent.
Lively messed over her own self by even so much as doing these interviews that she did, wearing the clothes that she did. Basically, she created this problem for her own.
Breaking down Blake's real motive reveals a more disturbing picture. Her legal move against Wallace wasn't just about defending her reputation. It was about silencing a witness before trial discovery could expose even more damaging details.
Lively absolutely did a lot of the stuff she's accused of doing. I do not like how she acts. I do not like how she behaves. I don't like how she treats people. And frankly, just as a side, I don't really like the clothes she picked out for that character. They were ugly.
Discovery, the formal legal process where both sides gather evidence, was about to begin. Once Wallace was locked into defending himself in a new lawsuit, It complicated his ability to continue helping Baldoni's and AL's cases against Jones Works, and by extension, Blake Lively.
He filed a complaint. It went on to allege that his conduct included S, harassment, retaliation, failure to investigate, prevent, and/or remedy harassment, aiding and abetting harassment, and retaliation.
There's heavy irony in Blake's strategy. Her legal complaint mirrored exactly what typical corporate employers do when whistleblowers come forward: slap them with lawsuits to scare them, discredit them, and drain them financially. It's a textbook retaliation play, usually carried out by large companies trying to suppress damaging disclosures. In Blake's case, it looked desperate.
He got sued for S harassment. He's saying, I did not S harass her. I did not retaliate against her. I never entered into any contracts with Blake Lively, so I had no contractual obligation to her.
The most devastating part for Blake? Filing a lawsuit against Wallace only made her look more guilty, not less. It validated Wallace's original claims about retaliation.
Blake put Jed Wallace and Street Relations Inc. in the not really a lawsuit complaint. But when she went to file the real lawsuit, she did not put it.
In legal terms, this move is called retaliatory litigation, filing lawsuits intended to punish someone for exercising their protected rights. Courts take this extremely seriously because it undermines the entire judicial process. Instead of shutting Wallace down, Blake's lawsuit risked opening her up to anti-SLAPP motions under California law.
Are saying that the mere fact that you're part of a conspiracy is enough for us to drag you into New York, even though you otherwise would not fit under the long arm.
Anti-SLAPP statutes, strategic lawsuits against public participation, exist to protect individuals from retaliatory lawsuits when they're speaking out about matters of public interest. Wallace's statement involved public figures, workplace misconduct, and legal manipulation, all protected speech.
Administrative remedies with the EEOC.
And so if she did not get a right to sue under EEOC, even if those two claims go away, she still has all the under California.
If Wallace's attorneys filed an anti-SLAPP motion and won, Blake could be forced to pay Wallace's legal fees and face additional sanctions. The entire sequence of events painted a clear picture. Wallace wasn't the one retaliating.
He's been dragged into this. I think he's trying to run a business in Texas, and he's going to have to go to New York and be dragged to New York. If they get him up there, it's going to make his life.
Blake's legal team was scrambling to silence a key witness before his testimony did even more damage. And the harder they pushed, the more it looked like Wallace's original claims about intimidation and retaliation were absolutely true. Beyond the personal attack on Wallace, his testimony blew open a much bigger scandal: Stephanie Jones' toxic workplace at Jones Works. For years, Jones Works had operated with a polished, celebrity-friendly exterior.
A clerk that has to review this, you're literally not going to read this.
No.
You're simply just going to throw it to the side because you have so many cases you're working on. And so you have to be able to, look, all of this could be very substantive. All of this could be very good information. It's just presented in a way, in my opinion, I think it could be presented much.
But Wallace's sworn statement confirmed what former employees like Jennifer Ale and others alleged in separate lawsuits. The reality inside Jones Works was anything but glamorous. Wallace's testimony lined up directly with the allegations in Justin Baldoni's legal filings and Jennifer Ale's wrongful termination lawsuit. Both suits accused Jones Works of fostering a toxic environment, breaching contracts, and intimidating employees.
Is trying to say that a substantial part of the events giving rise to the underlying tort, which is false light, intentional infliction, emotional distress, and all that, took place in...
Wallace's declaration provided the missing link. He wasn't just describing vague toxic behavior. He specifically pointed to illegal practices, including pressuring employees to manipulate media narratives and actively suppress negative coverage of clients, especially Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. The pressure tactics described by Wallace were severe. Employees were allegedly coached on how to steer journalists away from unflattering stories about Blake and Ryan. If negative coverage couldn't be stopped, Jones Works allegedly used intimidation tactics against media outlets, threatening loss of access to celebrity interviews or exclusive scoops if they didn't back off.
There's discussed Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath's misconduct. So that was the 17 points that they went over. That was in 2023.
Was Jed Wallace even on the scene?
Internal communications exposed by Wallace detailed even more disturbing practices. According to him, Stephanie Jones herself allegedly coached Blake on how to spin allegations in the media. This wasn't just about protecting Blake's brand. It was about actively shaping a false narrative that made Blake appear as the wronged party, even when evidence pointed the other way.
Wallace online, I don't remember seeing it there.
They're saying it's, obviously, it's in their four corners of their document, their amended complaint at paragraph 217 and 218.
Yeah, and I looked at those. I have the complaint in front of me that Lively filed, the amended complaint. And here's what's interesting about 218. It starts with, on information and belief, Mr. Wallace specializes in,
right,
et cetera, et cetera.
Wallace's testimony destroyed any chance Blake had of pleading ignorance. If Jones' works had been operating on its own, Blake might have been able to claim she didn't know what was happening. But Wallace's statement indicated Blake was directly coached on what to say.
Too, because it seems like everybody's kind of pointing in that direction, trying to figure out what law we want to apply. And really what they're doing is they're using the law or the arguments that best favor them.
In California, willful ignorance isn't a defense. If Blake's team actively participates in shaping false narratives with knowledge of the real facts, it opens the door to charges of conspiracy, defamation, and more civil liabilities. Wallace's declaration, though only 2 pages, dismantled any plausible deniability Blake could have maintained. Under California law, retaliation against a witness who has provided a sworn statement is a serious offense. Wallace wasn't vague in his wording. He accused parties linked to Blake Lively of engaging in intimidation tactics after he refused to lie about what he witnessed.
The claim against Jed Wallace is that he aided and abetted in violating FEHA, which you can do. So a non-employer can actually be liable under FEHA if they aid and abet somebody else, an employer, in harassing.
Because his testimony was filed under penalty of perjury, meaning lying would itself be a crime under California Code of Civil Procedure Section 2015.5. Any retaliatory behavior following that filing could be seen as obstruction of justice, a charge that carries criminal penalties under both state and federal law. Beyond the criminal exposure, Wallace's allegations made Blake's own employment contracts vulnerable. Most employment in California is at will, but any proven retaliation against an employee or contractor who reports unlawful conduct voids standard protections employers have. If Wallace's testimony about retaliation holds up, it could open the door for the entire network tied to Blake, including Jones' works, to face contract voidability claims. This means former employees and contractors could claim their non-disclosure agreements, employment clauses, and confidentiality contracts are invalid, giving them legal freedom to disclose even more damaging information without fear of breach of contract lawsuits.
Can actually be liable under FEHA if they aid and abet somebody else, an employer, in harassing somebody. So they're saying here that first, that Ms. Lively has not adequately alleged the knowledge element of the claim and against.
Wallace didn't just stop at basic retaliation claims. Buried in his statement were hints at a larger conspiracy, that Blake's team, in coordination with Jones' works, interfered with witnesses involved in the lawsuits against Jones and Wayfarer Studios. In legal terms, that's witness tampering. It's illegal to knowingly and maliciously attempt to prevent or dissuade a witness from attending or testifying truthfully in any legal proceeding.
Texas would have to know whatever conduct he was conspiring about. He would have to know that it took place. He would have to understand what FEHA was.
And that it violated FEHA to do that.
Okay.
So, because you can't know that you're violating.
An overlooked but outrageous detail, because Wallace's claims involve potentially tampered communications across state lines. Federal agencies like the FBI could get involved independently of any civil actions. Even if Blake settled her civil issues, federal investigators wouldn't be obligated to stop looking into tampering allegations. And federal obstruction of justice charges carry prison terms of up to 20 years under U.S. sentencing guidelines. Wallace's 2-page document wasn't just an inconvenience for Blake Lively. It was a legal minefield that could trigger cascading lawsuits, contract voids, civil penalties, and even criminal investigations. All from a man who wasn't even part of the main lawsuits filed by Justin Baldoni or Jennifer L.
They don't want to lose the point they're trying to make in this word salad here. This is a giant word salad. We're not sure what we should be reading. There's paragraph signs, there's numbers, there's capitals, there's block text is fully justified. This is really hard to take in.
As Wallace's testimony unraveled, another pillar of Blake's legal defense crumbled. The so-called smear campaign narrative her team had carefully built. Blake had originally claimed that Wayfair Studios, and specifically Justin Baldoni, had orchestrated a coordinated campaign to damage her reputation. But Wallace's affidavit torched that storyline beyond repair. In his sworn statement, Wallace confirmed that Jones Works actively monitored press coverage about Blake and manipulated media narratives behind the scenes. This wasn't speculation.
Multiple people who supposedly ran an untraceable smear campaign against you. A smear campaign so untraceable that you had 800 plus pages to outline your claims of it to the courts.
Last 35. The irony is brutal. In trying to silence Jed Wallace, Blake might accidentally expose even deeper levels of PR manipulation, witness intimidation, and internal misconduct. By suing Wallace, she invites discovery, meaning Wallace's attorneys would have the right to subpoena internal communications, demand depositions, and expose conversations Blake likely never intended to see the light of day. Instead of containing the damage, Blake's lawsuit could blast the entire scandal wide open, dragging in new witnesses, journalists, and possibly even federal investigators. If the tampering allegations stick, what began as an attempt to bury a 2-page declaration might become a full-blown public trial of Blake's behind-the-scenes empire, one that Hollywood and the public may not easily forgive.